Hello, welcome back to the Journey Mappers podcast, the official OU Pledge podcast, sponsored by the Oakland University Credit Union. My name is Maelle Rouquet, and I'm a career and life design coach in the Career and Life Design School of Business Administration at Oakland University. And today I'm going to have an exciting guest, Jessica Hodor, who is an Oakland University alumni from the School of Business Administration. And she's had a dynamic career from careers within operations, consulting, project management, digital marketing, and also worked in the tech and manufacturing industries. So welcome to Journey Mappers podcast, Jessica.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here.
So today, what really interests me about your story is the nonlinear nature of your path. So I know that you started at OU and you graduated with a marketing degree, with an international management minor and a French minor. And then from there, you didn't directly start your career within marketing, right?
No.
So it was a bit of a nonlinear path. So what I love about your story is that it shows that it's possible to go into a career that's not directly correlated with your major. And that from there, you can build from your experiences, you can still grow and expand, and you can always pivot to different career paths. So I love that story, and I want to share what that looks like with students. So first, we're going to get started and talk a little bit about your time at OU, right? The foundation of that trajectory. So let's bring some linearity into the non-linearity of your experience. So tell me a bit about your experience at OU, your educational background, if you can build from that, any other experiences that were connected to your professional experience.
Yes. Okay. So first off, thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really happy to be here. I think OU has a lot of great programs and a lot of great opportunities for students that everyone should really be taking advantage of. For me personally, I took advantage of the facilities to run. So I'd run before classes. And you're meeting people and you're networking. You're seeing the same people in the locker room. You know, if you're on the track at a certain time each day. I was involved in the American Marketing Association as well. Which was great. It was another opportunity to kind of come together and meet more people. Those were a couple key things, and I bring those up to you today because they are all networking opportunities. And at the time, when I was 20-something, I don't think I recognized that. I didn't realize the value of that.
So much value into that, yeah, networking and building that from the beginning. We're doing it every day. Was there other experiences that contributed to your development as a professional?
Yeah, I mean, the head of the American Marketing Association, he's a faculty member for marketing. I don't think he's no longer with the university because he's retired, but he was really influential and really building confidence, because I don't think I had a lot of confidence when I was, when I was here a student, because I didn't know the future. And so those it was really like coaching and mentoring. That really helped. But in terms of internships, I was successful at landing a couple internships. I financed my own education here at Oakland University. So I was able to land a couple internships at Valio, which used to be just down the street at university. And I was studying marketing and international management in French. Right. But there were these opportunities, 2 internships. One was in finance, which was really intimidating for me because that was not one of my...
Right.
And then the other one was shipping and receiving. So while I was, the last year or so at Oakland University, I was down the street working in the finance department from 8 to noon, and then from 1 to 5 working in shipping and receiving. And then coming here to the classes from, I had 16 credit hours from 6 to 10. But what was really great about that opportunity is, especially in shipping and receiving, there were engineers coming in looking for their parts. I learned about packing slips, and, later on we'll kind of talk about my experiences, but I ended up in supply chain. And, the packing list and shipping and receiving, that those things are kind of all really tied together.
Yeah, that's awesome. And hearing that, you didn't necessarily get a marketing internship and you went to finance, you went into purchasing, and then it led you to, other opportunities down the line that all connect, and we'll connect all those dots together. So I'd like to hear more about your vision, right? You had those internships, you had these experiences with AMA. And when you were at the point of graduation, what were you envisioning for yourself, the different paths? And the reason I'm asking that is because we introduce students to an activity called Mapping Your Journey. And the idea is that there's no one right path, and there are multiple correct paths or lives and careers that you can live. And so it helps students start to really dream and think of all the different elements of what they want in their life, and to also be flexible. So tell me about what were you envisioning for yourselves?
I was so cheesy. I was really like, I don't even know if we're using that word anymore, cheesy. But when I was a senior, I had like this bucket list of 3 things that I wanted. One is I wanted to work in a glass office, like in a tall building. Another one was I wanted to make 6 figures. Another one was that I wanted to live abroad. I didn't know how I was going to achieve those 3 things, but that was kind of like the dreamy part of me of like, oh, I'm graduating and, these are kind of like the dreamy things that I want to do. But realistically, I needed a job. I didn't want to, I love my mom, but I, needed to venture out on my own and really become and grow more independent. And so I leaned into my network at Valio from those 2 internships, and I landed a role in supply chain. I didn't even really know what that term meant. I mean, honestly, with even going into marketing, why I chose marketing was because I really like I like to learn how people think and the psychology behind. And so that piece was really interesting. But I don't think when I was like 20 years old, even though I was interested in that degree, I don't think I really thought out of what am I going to do with that? If I understand consumer behavior, then what? I didn't know what that looked like. So it was really just kind of like getting out there and finance and shipping and receiving. And then in supply chain, those first few years were just learning about how business works.
Yeah, and you don't have a clear image, right, when you're out of college. You have no idea. You have some ideas, some glimpses of what you want. And I love that, you had this idea of studying abroad or working abroad. And then from there, you made it happen just through connections.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And you followed that. You didn't know where it was going to lead either.
Valio is a French company. So I was in supply chain for a couple of years, and there was this big, tall guy who I just remember him. He always had like this headset on, and I think he worked in sales in a different entity of Valio. And I heard him kind of like switching languages, and he was American, and I was like super impressed that he could just switch from Japanese to German to all these languages. And I had heard that he was moving to France, that he had a kind of contract for 3 years or something. So it was very early in my career, and I kind of came up to him and I said, "Hi, my name is Jessica, and I heard you're going to France, and well, I want to go someday. I would really like to, to explore that. I studied French. I'm really interested in, seeing Valio like in the headquarters." And he gave me an opportunity, and I had to be bold. And I'm not comfortable. I mean, even as a woman, I'm not always comfortable as, for asking for things.
And that's the thing you want to express to people. What you desire, what you want, right? Because this is how things align in life. And who knows, if you ever never asked him, we don't know where you would have been today. So yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that story.
My dream wouldn't have come true. I got to live and work in France.
Yeah.
Just by, asking, inquiring about it.
Golden Grizzlies, earn more and stand out. Whether you're restocking your fridge or fueling up for your next road trip, make your everyday purchases count with OU Credit Union. The Visa Signature Credit Card gives you perks with every swipe. 3% cash back on groceries, 2% on gas, travel, and university purchases, and 1% on everything else. Plus, with its sleek black grizz design, you'll show off your OU pride every time you swipe. Learn more and apply today at oucreditunion.org/visa.
So now I want to talk more about your career trajectory, right? So you had those internships, you started working at Valio. So tell me a little bit about what does your career path look like up until today? What were those career titles that you had, and those at what companies did you work at?
Yeah, well, I continued my journey at Valeo. I switched from purchasing into sales because that's where the manager that I was speaking of, referring to at Valeo, was in sales. And so I took a job in sales, and I didn't really understand everything kind of like behind what that means for sales. But I was working on the pipeline of kind of like what we had in orders. And so it was all just kind of like learning on the job. And so I came back, and there weren't too many opportunities at the company available for me. But I really liked, the international, global, feel of companies. It was always very interesting to me. And I found an opportunity at Siemens Video. It doesn't exist anymore, but it's a German company. And I went into supply chain because I had already, it's like a few years out of graduating from OU, and I had a few years. And so now HR is like kind of like starting to look for the keywords because I've been out of school for a little bit. So they were looking at purchasing, and that's where it's kind of coming to the resume matching to real job experiences. Whereas my resume looked a lot different when I was first looking for a job. I was kind of like focused more on skills, those kind of like major themes of like, on my resume of communication, project management, and just really focusing on, even though I wasn't a project manager, there are still, skills of everyday things that we're doing for like project management, how we communicate, different methods, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I'm hearing that you really looked at how to translate those experiences using those keywords into the next. So after you were project manager, where did you go? How did you build from there?
Right. Yeah. So I ended up doing consulting.
Okay.
I had an opportunity because the thing at Siemens Video ended up being sold off, and the companies were switching. So I did consulting for 5 years at Siemens Corporation, and I became pregnant with my first child, Dimitri, who's now 12 years old. And I couldn't be, I wanted to be present for my children. And so I needed to take a step back from the consulting, and I wanted to go into project management because I thought, well, I have all these different kinds of functional experiences now, like shipping and receiving, some, supply chain, some sales. So in consulting, which is project management. But what's interesting is that I was informed that when I applied for that role in project management, that my resume was tossed because I didn't have project management as a title. But what I was able to do is I leveraged LinkedIn and my network and people that I've worked with in the past. And I said, who's the hiring manager? Yeah. Which again, it's not always comfortable to be bold. And it was like a cold call. And so I called the head of engineering and I said, hi, my name is Jessica. Found out, got your name from so-and-so, and there's this opportunity and I'm like really interested in being a project manager for you. I'd love to have a conversation. And I mean, he must have said like 5 words, like, oh, what's your name again? It's Jessica. Okay, well, I'll, thank you for calling. We'll be in touch or something just like really short. And I was like, oh man, that's a disaster. But then HR called me the next day and said, the reason why I'm calling you right now is because that's what a project manager needs to do. You need to be able to navigate the network and get to what it is that you want. And so I needed to talk to that head of, the hiring manager. And I was able to navigate that there because, in the working world, the expectation is that you figure it out. You go to, your network, either your outside network or you're using your colleagues in different functions to go figure it out, or ChatGPT. You're finding the answers on your own.
Yeah, and students will have this idea that they need to have it all figured out, that they need to know how to do marketing, work in finance right before they get that first job. And your journey beautifully shows that you have to put yourself out there, to be bold, to ask questions, to find out who is hiring, to shape your experiences. And I want to dive a little bit deeper into that, right? How you're transitioning. And you started talking about how you're able to really look at what it is that the next job requires and being able to really seamlessly communicate that you can do this and to demonstrate that. So was there any other tips or advice you have for our audience here about how to transition, how to move through those career transitions?
Yeah, I'd love to loop back on something that you said, and it's this kind of pressure of, I've got this degree, a marketing degree or a finance degree or, whatever it is. I think it's maybe a little bit different in science and engineering. I think typically graduates with those types of STEM degrees end up in a role that's more directly aligned, whereas in the business field and some other fields, this recent survey on Career Builder summarized that around 46% of graduates actually, that 46% of graduates do not take a job in their field straight out of college. Yeah. And 1/3 never even get to it. I mean, I didn't even get to marketing until 20 years. Okay, now it's saying my age a little bit. I didn't take a marketing job until 20 years later.
Yeah.
It's so that pressure, I mean, it also comes into, do you need to work? Because if you need to work straight away, my advice would be find something, use your leverage your network. It might not be your dream job, but you're going to meet people and you're going to learn new skills. You're going to learn more about how the business works, or if you're in education, how the system works. It's just continuous learning. My other piece of advice would be to think about what you want to do next. Just because you have your degree doesn't mean that that's where the learning is stopping. Yeah. Some may want to go for an MBA, and it's really like the best thing. And Jessica's, in my opinion, is to wait a few years to maybe go for that, so that you get some working experience, and you might get more out of that experience of getting an MBA. From my side, I wanted to keep growing in my career and keep learning new things. And so I would look at job descriptions. I get really excited about job descriptions. And I know.
Rare.
So, but like I would find a job description and it would say something about like agile. And I didn't know what the heck agile was. So I researched it. Change management is a really big topic, has been a big topic as the industries are kind of like, I feel like if you're looking at job descriptions, there's a lot, that word transformation is everywhere around change management. So my advice is to find some of those keywords, in a job description, find something that's interesting to you, and go get a certification around it and build and then you get to post it on LinkedIn and everyone's like, oh, wow, look who's on the top of my feed. I wonder what they're up to, and it just kind of goes from there.
Yeah, so you're adding to your experiences, you're building from there, you're keenly attuning yourself, what's happening in the labor market, what's needed into the future, and you're aligning yourself with that through continuous learning and education. And how would you summarize overall how you landed back into marketing, having not necessarily been there in the first place, right?
Yeah, the common thread was project management.
Yeah.
When I landed that role in project management, I was working at Maelle, an automotive supplier at the time. And then there was during COVID, there were a lot of changes, and I was unemployed for a little bit during the COVID time. And I found an opportunity at General Motors. It was a contract position, but it was project manager. It was a project manager in marketing. And I was like, wow, that's going to be fun because I have my marketing degree and I finally get to use it. And I have the project management experience. And so when I was preparing for that interview, I just really thought about my experiences. And then I read through the job description, what they were looking for, and I tried to, draw the common threads and really have my story prepared of why I was qualified for that from bringing past experiences and the education that I had here at Oakland.
And you mentioned storytelling, and it seems to be a huge component of your career transitions on top of, continuous learning and networking and being proactive. So what type of advice do you have for students on how to shape a compelling story to move into a different career path?
There are so many good reads on this topic, and maybe I can share that with you, later on, and we could make that available. But I think that I think storytelling is such a key, I don't know, like skill or trait. I would say a skill because it does take practice. And my suggestion would really be to, for students to really educate themselves and get good at storytelling, because there is a technique behind that. But, just kind of like starting with the common themes. And when you're storytelling, you have to know your audience. Your story is going to look a little bit different to HR maybe than it would be to the hiring manager, who might be more technical for the role. And so you might want to provide some different examples around the technical aspects or storytelling, with the hiring manager, whereas with human resources, or sometimes it's called people and organization, so that I think that function is evolving. You might want to bring in some examples about how you're a team player, being collaborative, maybe some outside activities, things that you volunteered in to really show that you would be a good fit for the culture.
Yeah, so I'm hearing that being able to know your audience and then kind of shape the story from your past experiences from there. And I would add also knowing yourself, right? What kind of speaker are you? What are your strengths? Authenticity is huge, right? To have that compelling story shine through, and being present and mindful and listening and having those back and forth and communication. When you're storytelling, there's usually an element of resonance with the person you're talking to. So those stories merge together to find a common ground. So these are some additional points I would on top of my head about storytelling. So finally, I wanted to talk about those challenges, right? Because I'm sure you didn't have your path laid out in front of you. You didn't know you were going to be here today. You had all these twists and turns. So I'm curious to understand, what was some challenges first that you might have had come up, and how did you overcome them and just trust the process?
Well, looking at the job description of the role that I wanted and having a story for each of those bullets. So if there was something about analysis, I thought about my experience as, in supply chain. I did reporting and analysis of quality reports, that kind of thing. Yeah. So I brought that in. I was a product manager for a little bit, and there was a lot of data analysis around that, looking at data, right? So, but I want to bring up that word again, analysis. We usually see analysis in job descriptions. We usually see communication in job descriptions. Some type of project management traits around stakeholders or timelines or risk. Those words, I think if we all kind of like sat down and we could pencil out a little story about how, the communication style or successes that we've had in communication, successes that we've had in different timelines. I don't know. If we're fresh out of school, I could use an example about, how things were so intense with like a semester with balancing, work and balancing school. And then there's the family stuff, and maybe there's, a pet. And it just seems like everything is just so, how did you overcome that?
Yeah.
So I think, preparing for an interview, I know that's not what this podcast is about, preparing for an interview, but the storytelling piece does tie into that. If we kind of like sit down and say like, okay, well, analysis or communication, this is how I overcame, situational stories that you're able to share.
Yeah, and we have those experiences every day.
Yes.
Like you said, we're building skills, professional skills on a daily basis, whether we realize it or not. Analyzing,
yes.
Problem solving, being creative, communicating, that's happening all the time. So we can always move through those experiences with openness, with curiosity, and from there, reflect back and use those as examples to shape our stories to get us to wherever we want to be, wherever we want to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our country is really flexible in that way of, if I'm graduating with a marketing degree, I might end up in finance or a different department or a different functional area. I think there are some European countries where if you have a supply chain degree, that's it. That's your whole, like, that's your career.
Yes, yeah.
It's like a match like that. But I think here, in our country, it's
flexible.
It's a lot more flexible.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's another word we talked about before we started the podcast is flexible, of like how I've been seeing that word a lot in job descriptions. There is a lot of movement right now in the industry, in the tech industry, mergers and acquisitions happening, lots of transformations happening. And we need to, employers want to see, that the candidates are flexible and willing to change, with the situation.
Yeah, to be adaptable, yeah.
So I think that's also a good one. Again, I know that this podcast is not about preparing for interviews, but having some examples, ready of how you can be or how you have been flexible.
Yeah. All right. So what about last pieces of advice you might have for students about the uncertainty of the future?
Don't put pressure on yourself to say, I've got, I don't know, an IT or business manager, like this degree and I need to match it. Just take the pressure off and, look for opportunities that might seem exciting. Get your feet wet. Don't let your education stop at OU. Well, maybe get a master's or an MBA at OU, but continue your education, whether it be through, something technical or certifications. Keep going. We need to stay fresh. Just because you have a degree doesn't mean it's ending. We need to stay up with industry trends and, be on top of what's happening.
Yeah, I love hearing that. And keeping ourselves fresh in the sense of continuously adapting, because things keep moving, things keeps changing. So we gotta move with that movement, with that flow.
Yes, I have had a lot of movement, and there were a couple of roles that there were no job descriptions for. So kind of like you had asked about advice, really staying in tune with your network at your employer once you do land. Understand what the challenges are. Talk to leaders outside of your functional area. I remember sitting down with, one of the leaders at my previous jobs, and I said, I think I need to step down from this role because of some personal issues. What are some of the challenges that you're having? Here's how I can help solve those problems. So having those kinds of conversations, not because I just feel like I maybe talked a little bit too much about job descriptions, because there are roles out there that maybe the leaders don't see that they need. Could be a chief of staff. Could be, a function that doesn't exist today.
So opening up the idea to this new role, this new,
listening to the leaders, asking about the challenges, understanding what's going on outside of your department.
So Jessica, your story is such a great example of a career path that doesn't have a set developmental layout. And it really shows that our majors don't define our future, and we can always pivot, we can always expand. And it's also a reminder that we have to be curious. We have to be bold. We have to build connections along the way and try different things and see how things unfold from there, right? No matter how uncertain it looks like. And then from there, when we do these things, doors open up. So thank you so much. So thanks so much for sharing your story today.
My pleasure. I'm so happy to be here back on campus. Campus looks great.
Thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Journey Mappers podcast. We will see you next time.